A millionaire stood up and shouted, "I bet $100,000 no one can last 5 seconds on my bull." Everyone laughed, until a quiet black boy stepped into the ring. What happened next silenced the entire crowd in shock. Black boy rides the bull. For 5 seconds isn't just a title, it's a revolution. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise that this will be the best story you will hear in your life. The dust swirled beneath the Texas sun as crowds gathered for the annual Willow Creek Rodeo, a tradition older than most of the weathered wooden stands surrounding the arena. In this small town where everyone knew everyone's business, the rodeo wasn't just entertainment. It was the beating heart of the community's social calendar. For one weekend each year, Willow Creek transformed from a quiet dot on the map to a bustling center of excitement, drawing visitors from neighboring counties and breathing life into local businesses. At the center of this year's spectacle was Bronco Thunder, a massive bull with coal-black hide and eyes that seemed to burn with primal fury. Standing nearly 6 feet at the shoulder with horns that curved like scimitars, the beast had built a fearsome reputation across 3 states. No rider had managed to stay mounted for even 3 seconds, and those who tried often left on stretchers. The animal wasn't just strong, it seemed to possess an uncanny intelligence, anticipating riders' movements before they made them. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice crackled through speakers mounted around the arena, "please welcome our special guest, Mr. Richard Montgomery." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd as a tall man in his 50s strode to the center of the arena. His custom-made boots kicked up small clouds of dust with each confident step. His Stetson hat, probably worth more than what most locals earned in a month, shaded piercing blue eyes that surveyed the crowd like a general inspecting troops. Richard Montgomery owned half the county, including the largest ranch, the processing plant, that employed 1/3 of the town, and according to rumors, several politicians' loyalty. "Thank you all for coming to this fine event," Montgomery's voice boomed, requiring no microphone. "As you know, I've recently acquired Bronco Thunder here, the finest bull in the circuit." He gestured toward the holding pen where the massive animal pawed at the ground. "And I've got a proposition that might interest some of you brave souls." The crowd leaned forward collectively, like wheat bending in the wind. $100,000, Montgomery announced, pausing to let the gasps subside. "To anyone who can stay on Bronco Thunder for just 5 seconds." He smiled, displaying perfect white teeth. "That's $20,000 per second, folks. Easiest money you'll ever make." At the edge of the arena, 17-year-old Marcus Johnson watched from behind a fence, his dark fingers curled around the weathered wood. Unlike most spectators who dressed in their rodeo best, Marcus wore faded jeans with a patched knee and a plain blue t-shirt that had seen better days. Tall and lean, he possessed a quiet strength built from years of hard work rather than gym memberships. "Easiest money," he repeated under his breath, calculating how many college applications that kind of money could fund, how many hospital bills it could pay, how many repairs their small house desperately needed. The Montgomery Scholarship Fund had rejected his application last month. "Not enough extracurricular activities," the letter had stated, though Marcus knew what it really meant. Kids like him, from the east side of Willow Creek, raised by single mothers who worked double shifts at Montgomery's meat processing plant, weren't what the fund was looking for, regardless of his perfect GPA. On the opposite side of the arena, Diane Montgomery, Richard's wife, sat in the shaded VIP section. Her blonde hair was styled immaculately, her sundress likely purchased in Dallas or Houston. Though she clapped politely at her husband's announcement, her eyes revealed a different sentiment, something like resigned disappointment. "Any takers?" Montgomery challenged, turning slowly to survey the crowd. Several young cowboys glanced at each other nervously, but no one stepped forward. "Come now, don't tell me Willow Creek has gone soft." His laughter boomed across the arena, joined by nervous chuckles from those who depended on his goodwill. Marcus felt something stir inside him, a quiet rage that had been building for years. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the dismissive way Montgomery looked past people like him, the casual cruelty in his assumption that no one would accept his challenge. "I'll do it," a voice called out, and it took Marcus a moment to realize it was his own. The crowd parted as he made his way toward the center of the arena. Whispers followed him like shadows. "That's Eva Johnson's boy. The one who works at Wilson's garage. Smart kid. But what's he thinking?" Montgomery's smile faltered momentarily when Marcus stepped into the ring, then returned with an edge of mockery. "Son, this isn't a joke. That's a 1,600-pound bull that's put professionals in the hospital." "I understand, sir," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. "I'd like to try." Montgomery studied him, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You ever rode before?" "No, sir." A dismissive chuckle. "Well, at least you're honest." Montgomery turned to the crowd, his voice rising theatrically. "Looks like we have our first volunteer. And to make things interesting, I'll double the prize. $200,000 if this young man can stay on Bronco Thunder." For 5 seconds, the crowd's reaction was mixed. Some cheered at the drama unfolding before them, while others murmured concerns. In the stands, Eva Johnson pushed through the crowd, her waitress uniform still on from her morning shift. "Marcus," she called, her voice tight with fear. "Marcus, don't do this." But Marcus was already being fitted with protective gear by the rodeo staff. A weathered bull rider named Jackson was giving him hurried instructions. "Keep your center of gravity low. Grip. With your thighs, not your hands. When you fall, not if, when. Try to roll away from the hooves." Eva reached the fence, her knuckles white as she gripped the railing. "Baby, please, we'll find another way." Marcus looked at his mother, at the premature lines around her eyes, the gray strands in her dark hair, the hands roughened by decades of work, and shook his head. "There is no other way, Mom, not in this town." Montgomery watched the exchange with mild interest before checking his watch. "Let's get this show on the road, shall we? I've got a dinner engagement in Houston tonight." Marcus was led to the chute where Bronco Thunder waited, the massive animal snorting and shifting in the confined space. Up close, the bull was even more intimidating, a mountain of muscle and fury. For a brief moment, doubt clouded Marcus's resolve. Then he thought of the rejection letter, of his mother's extra shifts, of Montgomery's smug certainty that no one would challenge him. Marcus climbed the chute, positioned himself on the bull's broad back, and wrapped the rope around his hand. The protective vest felt flimsy against the power beneath him. The helmet seemed like a plastic toy compared to the horns just inches from his legs. "You ready, boy?" asked the gate operator, an older man with kind eyes that held no hope. Marcus nodded, unable to trust his voice. Opening the gate in 3, 2, 1. The world exploded into chaos as Bronco Thunder burst from the chute simultaneously, twisting and bucking with a violence that seemed impossible for any living creature. Marcus felt his body whipped in directions it was never meant to go, his vision blurring as the horizon tilted crazily. 1 second passed, his arm wrenched painfully in its socket. 2 seconds, his teeth rattled with each impact. 3 seconds. The crowd's roar faded beneath the thunder of blood in his ears. 4 seconds. A strange calm descended as Marcus found his rhythm, moving with the bull rather than against it. 5 seconds. The buzzer sounded, distant and surreal. But Bronco Thunder wasn't finished. As Marcus tried to dismount, the bull twisted violently, sending him airborne. For a suspended moment, Marcus flew until gravity reclaimed him and the hard ground rushed up to meet his falling body. Marcus hit the ground with a thud that knocked the air from his lungs, then rolled instinctively as Jackson had instructed. His body screamed in protest, but adrenaline dulled the pain as he scrambled toward the safety fence. Behind him, Bronco Thunder pawed the earth, seemingly insulted that someone had broken his perfect record. For a moment, silence blanketed the arena. Then the announcer's voice broke through. "Ladies and gentlemen, the clock confirms it, 5.2 seconds. This young man has done the impossible." The crowd erupted in cheers and disbelief. People who had never acknowledged Marcus's existence were suddenly on their feet, applauding wildly. Local boys who'd ignored him in school hallways now looked at him with newfound respect. Even the rodeo clowns were shaking their heads in amazement. Vi pushed through the gate and ran to her son, checking him for injuries with trembling hands. "Are you hurt? Can you stand? What were you thinking?" The questions tumbled out between relieved sobs. "I'm okay, Mom," Marcus assured her, though his ribs protested sharply as he stood. "I'm okay, and we just won $200,000. The reality of what he'd accomplished began to sink. College tuition, medical bills, repairs for their leaking roof, a reliable car to replace their ancient sedan that broke down weekly. The weight of financial worry that had pressed on his shoulders since childhood suddenly lifted, and Marcus felt dizzy with possibility. Richard Montgomery made his way across the arena, his expression unreadable. The crowd quieted as he approached, anticipating the moment when the wealthy rancher would hand over the life-changing sum to the unlikely victor. "That was quite a show," Montgomery said, his voice carrying across the now silent arena. "Quite a show indeed." He glanced at the bull, now being led back to its pen. "But I'm afraid I can't award you the prize money." The collective gasp from the crowd was audible. Marcus froze, his momentary elation crashing around him. "What?" he managed. Montgomery adjusted his Stetson, seemingly unbothered by the tension crackling through the air. The bull was clearly tired from earlier demonstrations. Anyone could have stayed on him in that condition. It wasn't a fair test of the challenge I proposed. Eva stepped forward, her 5'4" frame somehow imposing as she faced down the richest man in the county. "My son met your challenge fair and square. Everyone here witnessed it." "Rules are rules, Mrs. Johnson," Montgomery replied dismissively. "And as the sponsor of this challenge, I have final say on whether the conditions were met." He turned to address the murmuring crowd. "I'll offer the same challenge tomorrow when Bronco Thunder is fresh. Anyone is welcome to try again." Marcus felt the familiar weight of disappointment settling back onto his shoulders. Of course Montgomery would find a way out. Men like him made the rules, broke them when convenient, and rewrote them when necessary. It had been foolish to think otherwise. "That's a load of bull, and you know it, Richard," called a new voice. The crowd parted to reveal Ellen Crawford, owner of the local hardware store and chairwoman of the Willow Creek Town Council. In her 60s, with silver hair cropped short and perpetually paint-stained jeans, Ellen was one of the few people in town who didn't fear Montgomery's influence. "That boy rode your bull for 5 seconds, just like you challenged. Everyone here saw it." She gestured to the stands where nods of agreement rippled through the spectators. "You're going to honor your word, or the Montgomery name won't be worth dirt in this county." Montgomery's jaw tightened. He and Ellen had been clashing for years over town development plans, environmental regulations, and worker protections. "This doesn't concern you, Ellen." "Like hell it doesn't," she replied, stepping closer. "This is about integrity, something that seems in short supply on your side of town." The tension between them was palpable, years of public disagreements crystallizing in this moment. From the VIP section, Diane Montgomery rose and made her way down to the arena, her movements graceful despite the urgency in her steps. "Richard," she said quietly as she reached her husband's side. Though her voice was low, the crowd had gone, so silent that her words carried. "Don't do this." Montgomery looked at his wife with surprise. Diane rarely contradicted him, especially in public. Their marriage, like many aspects of Montgomery's life, was more performance than substance, a partnership that looked perfect from the outside while growing hollow within. Before Montgomery could respond, Ellen Crawford spoke again, addressing the crowd rather than the rancher. "I have a proposal of my own. Since Mr. Montgomery seems reluctant to honor his commitment, I'd like to offer Marcus Johnson a full scholarship to any college of his choice through the Crawford Foundation. Additionally, I'm offering him a paid internship at Crawford Enterprises during summers and a guaranteed job after graduation." Murmurs spread through the crowd. The Crawford Foundation was smaller than Montgomery's charity operations, but known for actually helping those in need, rather than serving as a tax write-off and PR vehicle. "You can't just—" Montgomery began, but Ellen cut him off. "I just did. Some of us still believe that talent and determination should be rewarded, regardless of what part of town it comes from. She turned to Marcus and Eva. The offer stands. No strings attached, no bull riding required. Marcus stood speechless, trying to process this unexpected turn of events. The scholarship was worth far more than even the doubled prize money. It was a future, a path forward that had seemed impossible just hours ago. Eva squeezed her son's hand. "Thank you, Miss Crawford," she said, her voice steady despite the tears, glistening in her eyes. "We accept." The crowd's reaction was immediate. Applause, cheers, and even a few defiant whoops directed at Montgomery. The wealthy rancher found himself in an unfamiliar position, publicly outmaneuvered and embarrassed. His face flushed with anger, but centuries of breeding kept his expression controlled. "How touching," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Ellen Crawford, champion of the people. I wonder if the town knows how your family fortune was really made." Ellen's expression didn't change. "Unlike some, I don't hide from my family's past, Richard. I work to make amends for it." She turned back to Marcus. "Come by my office tomorrow and we'll start the paperwork." As Ellen walked away, the crowd's attention remained on Montgomery. The power dynamic had shifted palpably. People who had always feared him were now watching to see how he would react, judgment clear in their eyes. Diane touched her husband's arm lightly. "Richard, please, let's go." After a moment of rigid silence, Montgomery nodded curtly and allowed his wife to lead him toward the exit. As they walked, the crowd parted, but no longer with the deference he was accustomed to receiving. Something had changed today, and everyone knew it. Back at the center of the arena, Marcus found himself surrounded by well-wishers and newfound admirers. Former classmates clapped him on the back, local reporters asked for interviews, and younger kids looked at him with awe. For the first time in his life, he was visible in Willow Creek. Eva watched her son with a mixture of pride and concern. "This changes everything," she murmured to herself. She had no idea how right she was. Later that evening, as darkness settled over their small house on the east side of town, Marcus sat on the porch steps, holding an ice pack to his bruised ribs. The events of the day played on repeat in his mind. The terror of those 5 seconds on Bronco Thunder, Montgomery's refusal to pay, Ellen Crawford's unexpected intervention. Eva joined him, handing him a mug of hot chocolate, a comfort from his childhood that now seemed to belong to another lifetime. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, settling beside him. "I can't believe Miss Crawford did that," Marcus replied. "Why would she help us like that?" Eva sipped her own drink before answering. "Ellen Crawford has always been fair, and she's had her own battles with the Montgomerys over the years. But a full scholarship, a guaranteed job, that's more than fair, that's life-changing." "Sometimes people surprise you," Eva said softly. "Not everyone in this town is like Richard Montgomery." Marcus nodded, wincing as his bruised body reminded him of the day's ordeal. "Do you think he'll try to cause problems for us?" Eva's expression darkened slightly. "Richard Montgomery isn't a man who forgets being embarrassed, but what's done is done, and the whole town witnessed it." She squeezed her son's shoulder gently. "We'll be careful, but we won't live in fear. You earned this chance, and you're going to take it." As they sat in comfortable silence, headlights appeared on their quiet street, unusual for this time of night in their neighborhood. A sleek black car pulled up in front of their house, its engine purring expensively in the night. Marcus and Eva exchanged worried glances as the car door opened and Diane Montgomery stepped out, her elegant figure illuminated briefly by the interior light before she closed the door. She hesitated at the edge of their small yard, clearly uncomfortable in these unfamiliar surroundings. "Mrs. Johnson," she called softly. "Marcus, I was hoping I might have a word with you both." Eva stood protectively in front of Marcus, her posture tense. "Mrs. Montgomery, this is unexpected." Diane Montgomery clutched her designer handbag, looking out of place on the cracked concrete walkway leading to their modest porch. The diamonds on her fingers caught the porch light as she fidgeted nervously. "I apologize for coming unannounced," she said, her voice soft but cultured. "I wanted to speak with you both and privately." After a moment's hesitation, Eva nodded. Come in then. The contrast between Diane Montgomery and their living room was stark. Her cashmere sweater and tailored pants probably cost more than their entire furniture set. She perched on the edge of their worn couch, declining Eva's offer of coffee or water. "I came to apologize for my husband's behavior today," Diane began. "It was unconscionable, and I'm deeply ashamed." Eva remained standing, arms crossed. "With all due respect, Mrs. Montgomery, an apology doesn't change what happened." "I know." Diane reached into her handbag and withdrew an envelope, "which is why I brought this." She handed the envelope to Marcus. Inside was a cashier's check for $200,000, the promised prize money. "I can't accept this," Marcus said immediately, trying to return the envelope. "Your husband made it clear." "This isn't from Richard," Diane interrupted. "It's from me, from my personal account." She met Eva's surprised gaze. "Contrary to what most people think, I do have my own money. My family's, actually. Richard may have forgotten what integrity means, but I haven't." Eva studied the woman sitting in her living room, someone she'd seen at a distance for years, but never actually met. Like most people in town, she'd assumed Diane was just an extension of her husband, beautiful, privileged, and indifferent to those beneath her social station. "Why?" Eva asked simply. Diane seemed to deflate slightly, her perfect posture giving way to something more human. "Because what Richard did today was wrong. Because you deserve this." She looked at Marcus with genuine admiration. "What you did was extraordinary. You earned every penny of that money." Marcus still held the envelope awkwardly, unsure what to do. "Does Mr. Montgomery know you're here?" A small sad smile touched Diane's lips. "No, and he won't be pleased when he finds out." She straightened her shoulders. "But I've spent too many years being pleased with Richard Montgomery. It's time I remembered who I was before I became his wife." There was something in her voice, a quiet determination that resonated with Eva, who recognized the sound of a woman reclaiming something long surrendered. "Thank you," Eva said finally. "This will make a huge difference for Marcus's future." "Along with Ellen Crawford's scholarship," Diane added, "though I suspect Richard will try to pressure her to rescind it." "Can he do that?" Marcus asked, alarm evident in his voice. Diane shook her head. "Ellen Crawford is one of the few people in this town Richard can't intimidate or buy. Your scholarship is safe." She rose to leave, then hesitated. "There's something else I wanted to ask you, Mrs. Johnson, something personal." Eva tensed again. "Yes? How long did you work at Montgomery Ranch?" It would have been about 18 years ago. The question hung in the air like smoke. Eva's expression changed subtly, a flicker of something between recognition and dread crossing her features. 3 months, she answered carefully. "In the main house. Why do you ask?" Diane's gaze was steady now, searching Eva's face. "I thought I recognized you when I saw you at the arena today. You worked as a housekeeper during the spring quarter when I was away visiting my mother in Connecticut." Eva nodded slowly. "That's right." The two women looked at each other, some unspoken current passing between them. Marcus glanced from his mother to Diane, sensing he was missing something significant. "I should go," Diane said finally, breaking the tension. "Richard will be wondering where I am." She moved toward the door, then turned back. "Use the money. Well, Marcus, and don't let what happened today define you. Either the triumph or the humiliation afterward. There's more to life than what happens in that arena." After Diane left, the small house seemed quieter than before. Eva stood at the window watching the expensive car pull away, her expression troubled. "Mom?" Marcus prompted. "What was that about? Why did she ask about you working at the ranch?" Eva turned to her son, studying his face as if seeing it with new eyes. "It's nothing important. Ancient history." She forced a smile. "What matters is that you have your future secured now, the scholarship and this money. You can go to any college you want, become anything you want." But Marcus knew his mother too well to be fooled. "You're not telling me something." Eva sighed, suddenly looking exhausted. "Not tonight, Marcus. It's been a long day and you need to rest those ribs. We'll talk more tomorrow." Miles across town, in the luxurious Montgomery estate, Richard poured himself a third whiskey and stared out at the manicured grounds of his ranch. The home theater where he'd planned to spend the evening sat dark and unused. His interest in the night's entertainment evaporated after the humiliation at the rodeo. His cell phone rang for the fourth time. Likely Ellen Crawford, eager to finalize the details of the scholarship she'd so dramatically promised. He ignored it, just as he'd ignored the previous calls. The sound of the front door opening and closing echoed through the house. Moments later, Diane appeared in the doorway of his study. "Where have you been?" he asked, not bothering to mask his irritation. "Out," she replied simply, uncharacteristically defiant. "I needed some air after today's events." Richard's eyes narrowed. In 23 years of marriage, Diane had rarely challenged him. She'd been the perfect corporate wife, beautiful, charming at business functions, undemanding and above all compliant. This new tone was unexpected and unwelcome. Today was unfortunate, he conceded. The boy got lucky with a tired bull. These things happen. Diane's laugh was short and without humor. "Is that how you're justifying it to yourself? That boy risked his life to meet your challenge, and you cheated him because you couldn't stand being shown up in public." Richard stiffened. "I don't recall asking for your opinion on how I conduct my business." "No, you never do," she agreed. "And I've never offered it. Perhaps that's been my mistake." She turned to leave, then paused. "By the way, I saw Eva Johnson tonight." Richard's glass stopped halfway to his lips. "Who?" "Eva Johnson, Marcus's mother." Diane watched him carefully. "She worked here briefly about 18 years ago, as a housekeeper." The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Richard set his glass down slowly, his movements deliberate. "Why would you bring that up?" "Just making conversation," Diane replied lightly, though her eyes remained serious. "Interesting, isn't it? How small this town really is. How the past has a way of circling back around." She left the room without waiting for his response. Richard remained motionless for several long minutes after she departed. Then, with sudden purpose, he moved to his desk and unlocked the bottom drawer, the one that contained documents too personal for his assistant to handle. Buried beneath insurance policies and property deeds was a worn manila envelope he hadn't opened in years. Inside was a handwritten letter dated 18 years ago, the paper now yellowed with age. As he read the familiar words, Richard's expression changed from concern to shock. One passage in particular seemed to leap from the page. "I won't ask you for anything, Mr. Montgomery. I'm leaving town and won't contact you again. But you should know that I'm pregnant and the child is yours. I don't expect you to acknowledge this, and frankly, my child will be better off without your influence. I only tell you because someday you might cross paths with someone who has your eyes, your stubborn chin, your way of standing up to impossible odds, and you should know who they are." The letter was signed simply, Eva. Richard sank into his leather chair, the letter trembling in his hands. The boy in the arena today, tall, determined with a quiet dignity that had seemed oddly familiar, was his son. His son had ridden Bronco Thunder for 5 seconds, had withstood the impossible, had faced him down without flinching. And Richard had publicly humiliated him. The realization hit him with physical force. A son. He had a son he'd never acknowledged, never supported, never known. A son who had grown up in poverty on the east side of town while Richard lived in luxury. A son who had needed to risk his life on the back of a raging bull for a chance at college, a chance at a better life. Outside the study windows, rain began to fall, pattering against the glass like accusatory fingertips. Richard barely noticed. His mind raced through calculations, implications, possibilities. He thought of Eva Johnson, young, proud, fierce even then, working in his house briefly during one of Diane's extended absences. He remembered their brief affair, how he'd dismissed it as meaningless, how he'd been relieved when Eva resigned without explanation. He'd never connected those dots until now, never wanted to. The whiskey in his glass suddenly seemed repulsive. Richard pushed it away and buried his face in his hands. For the first time in decades, he felt something beyond the carefully cultivated emotions that served his public image. Real shame, burning through his chest like acid. What had he done? What kind of man had he become? Across the house, in her private sitting room, Diane Montgomery opened her laptop and began composing an email to her lawyer. After 23 years of a marriage that had slowly hollowed out like a diseased tree, she was finally ready to leave. Tonight's events had been the catalyst she'd been waiting for, or perhaps just the excuse she'd needed. As she typed, her thoughts drifted to the boy who had started this cascade of events, Marcus Johnson, Richard's son, though she doubted he knew it yet. She wondered what would happen when the truth emerged, as it inevitably would in a town like Willow Creek. Would Richard acknowledge him? Would Marcus even want to be acknowledged? One thing was certain, nothing in Willow Creek would ever be quite the same again. The following morning dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the emotional storms brewing throughout Willow Creek. At the Johnson household, Marcus awoke to find his achievements from the previous day splashed across the front page of the local newspaper. "Local teen conquers unconquerable bull," read the headline, accompanied by a dynamic photo of him mid-ride, face set in determination. Eva set a plate of pancakes in front of him, her own copy of the paper folded beside her coffee cup. "Your appointment with Miss Crawford is at 10, she reminded him. "I've got the day off to go with you." Marcus nodded, still processing the surreal turn his life had taken. 24 hours ago, he'd been just another invisible kid from the East Side. Now his phone was overflowing with messages from classmates who'd barely acknowledged his existence before. "Mom," he said, poking at his breakfast, "we need to talk about what Mrs. Montgomery asked you last night." Eva's hands stilled around her coffee mug. "Marcus, is Richard Montgomery my father?" The question hung in the air between them, 18 years in the making. Eva closed her eyes briefly, as if gathering strength, then met her son's steady gaze. "Yes," she admitted finally, "but he doesn't know, or at least he didn't until recently." Marcus absorbed this revelation with surprising calm. On some level, he'd known the truth since Diane Montgomery's visit. Certain puzzle pieces had clicked into place. His mother's reaction whenever Montgomery's name came up over the years, the strange look in Diane's eyes when she'd studied his face, the timing of it all. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. Eva reached across the table to take his hand. "At first I was afraid. Richard Montgomery is a powerful man in this town. I was 22 with no family support, no money. Later, when you started asking about your father, I told you he was someone who'd passed through town briefly. It seemed kinder than the truth. The truth that he wouldn't acknowledge me, that he didn't want me." "He never knew about you," Eva clarified. "I never told him. I wrote him a letter before I left town, but I never confirmed if he received it. I was proud. Too proud, maybe." She squeezed his hand. "You were mine, and I didn't want to share you with someone who wouldn't value you properly." Marcus processed this information slowly. "So yesterday, when I rode his bull, when he refused to pay the prize money, he didn't know who I was." "I don't think so," Eva replied. But Diane might have suspected. She always was more observant than people gave her credit for. The implications of this revelation were still unfolding in Marcus's mind when a knock at their front door interrupted the conversation. Eva's expression tightened as she rose to answer it. Richard Montgomery stood on their porch, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Gone was yesterday's arrogance. In its place was something unfamiliar, uncertainty. He'd traded his custom suit for simple jeans and a button-down shirt, though the quality of both still spoke of wealth. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, removing his hat, "I was hoping we might talk." Eva's posture was rigid. "I think you've said quite enough, Mr. Montgomery." "Please," he said, the word sounding foreign on his lips. "It's important." After a moment's hesitation, Eva stepped back, allowing him to enter. Richard stopped short when he saw Marcus at the kitchen table, newspaper spread before him. For a long moment, the two studied each other with new awareness. I received a visit from my wife last night, Richard began awkwardly. She seemed to think, that is, she suggested that we might have a connection. He cleared his throat. I found a letter afterward, from 18 years ago. Eva's chin lifted. I wasn't sure you'd ever read it. I did, though I'll admit I tried to forget it. Richard's gaze returned to Marcus. But looking at you now, I don't know how I missed it before. You have my mother's eyes. The silence that followed was heavy with 18 years of absence, of lost opportunities of what might have been. Why are you here? Marcus asked finally. Richard appeared to struggle with the question. I'm not entirely sure, he admitted. To apologize, I suppose, for yesterday, for everything before that. An apology doesn't change anything, Marcus said, echoing his mother's words from the previous night. No, it doesn't, Richard agreed, which is why I've come with something more concrete. He withdrew an envelope from his jacket. This is the deed to 50 acres of land on the west side of my property. It's yours now, along with a trust fund I've established in your name. Marcus made no move to take the envelope. I don't want your land or your money. Marcus, Eva, began, but her son cut her off. No, Mum. He thinks he can buy his way out of this, show up after 18 years and throw money at the problem. Marcus stood, facing the man who had contributed half his DNA, but nothing else to his existence. What I wanted was a father. What I needed was someone who cared if I succeeded or failed, who helped Mom when she was working 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads, who was there for my graduations, my birthdays, my first broken bone. Richard had the decency to look ashamed. You're right, I can't buy my way out of this. I can't make up for 18 years in a day. Then why try? Why now? Marcus demanded. Richard hesitated. Because yesterday when you rode that bull, when you did what no one else could do, I felt something I haven't felt in years. Pride. Except I didn't know then that I was proud of my own son. He set the envelope on the table. Take it or don't. Take it, that's your choice. But know that it comes with no strings attached. It's yours by right. Marcus looked to his mother, whose expression was unreadable. What do you think, Mom? Eva sighed. I think that what Mr. Montgomery is offering doesn't erase the past, but it might help your future. She turned to Richard. However, if Marcus accepts, I want your word that you won't interfere with Ellen Crawford's scholarship offer. That stands independent of this. Richard nodded. Of course. I've already called Ellen this morning to assure her of my support for Marcus's scholarship. A rueful smile crossed his face. She was surprised to hear from me. I bet she was, Eva murmured. Marcus still hesitated. What exactly are you hoping for here? That we suddenly become one big happy family? No, Richard replied honestly. I don't have the right to expect that. What I'm hoping for is a chance to get to know you, to be some small part of your life going forward if you'll allow it. Before Marcus could respond, another knock sounded at the door. This time when Eva opened it, Ellen Crawford stood on the porch, her expression darkening when she spotted Richard inside. Am I interrupting something? She asked sharply. No, please come in, Eva invited. Mr. Montgomery was just leaving. Richard didn't contradict her. He placed his business card on top of the envelope. Think about it, Marcus. Whatever you decide, the offer stands. He nodded to Ellen as he passed. Miss Crawford. Richard, she acknowledged coolly, watching him go before turning back to Eva and Marcus. I brought the scholarship paperwork as promised, but I'm curious. What was he doing here? Marcus and Eva exchanged a look, silently debating how much to share. Finally, Marcus said, It's complicated. Family business. Ellen's eyebrows rose, but she didn't press further. Well, his loss is my gain. I've been trying to recruit you for my internship program since you won the state science fair last year, but Montgomery's scholarship committee kept blocking my efforts. She spread papers across the table. Now I finally get to bring the brightest mind in Willow Creek onto my team. The next few hours were spent reviewing scholarship details, internship opportunities, and housing options near several prestigious universities. By the time Ellen left, Marcus's future had been mapped out in ways he'd only dreamed of before. "What are you thinking?" Eva asked when they were alone again, nodding toward the envelope Richard had left. Marcus tapped it thoughtfully. "I'm thinking that 50 acres would make an excellent location for a community center. Something for the East Side kids, where they could get tutoring, computer access, maybe even college counseling." Eva smiled, recognizing the same determination that had driven her son onto the back of Bronco Thunder. "You're not planning to house it for yourself, are you?" "Why would I? I've got Ms. Crawford's scholarship. I've got the money Mrs. Montgomery gave us." He picked up the envelope. "This should go toward helping other kids who don't have those advantages." Pride swelled in Eva's chest. "You know, you could just give it back to him." "You don't owe Richard Montgomery anything." "It's not about owing him," Marcus replied. "It's about what I can do with what he's giving me. Sometimes the best revenge is using someone's resources to fix the problems they helped create." Eva laughed. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher," he said, squeezing her hand. 5 years later, the East Willow Community Center stood completed on what had once been Montgomery land. Its modern facilities included a computer lab, tutoring rooms, athletic courts, and a college preparation center that had already helped dozens of local students secure scholarships to universities across the country. Marcus, now a senior at MIT with job offers from top tech companies, had returned to Willow Creek for the center's official opening. As he prepared to cut the ribbon, he surveyed the crowd gathered on the front lawn, a mix of East Side and West Side residents, united in their support for what the center represented. His mother stood in the front row, pride shining in her eyes. Beside her, unexpectedly, stood Richard Montgomery, older now and somehow humbler. Their relationship had evolved slowly over the years, not into the father-son bond of childhood dreams, but into something measured and cautious, built on small moments of connection rather than grand gestures. Richard had changed in other ways, too. Following his divorce from Diane, who now ran a successful art gallery in Houston, he had gradually shifted his business practices, improving working conditions at his plants, establishing fair housing initiatives, and supporting local education programs. Some said he was trying to buy redemption, others recognized a genuine transformation. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in between. Ellen Crawford stood nearby, her silver hair now completely white, but her energy undiminished. Her mentorship had been invaluable to Marcus, guiding him through college applications, internships, and the early stages of his own business ventures. "Remember," she'd told him once, "success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you give back." As Marcus addressed the crowd, his words carried across the lawn where Bronco Thunder had once thrown him to the dirt. 5 seconds, he began. 5 seconds on the back of a bull changed the trajectory of my life. Not because of what I won that day, but because of what I learned. That sometimes the greatest obstacles become our greatest opportunities. That endurance matters more than initial advantage. That second chances are possible, even in places where the rules seem fixed. He looked at the faces before him, people who had doubted him, ignored him, cheered for him, invested in him. This center isn't about me. It's about making sure that every kid in Willow Creek has the chance to ride their own bull, to face their own challenges and discover their own strength. Because talent and potential exist everywhere, opportunity shouldn't be the privilege of a few. As the ribbon fell and the crowd erupted in applause, Marcus caught his mother's eye. Her smile contained everything they'd been through together, the struggles, the triumphs, the quiet dignity that had shaped him more than any DNA ever could. Richard approached afterward, offering a handshake that Marcus accepted. "Your grandfather would have been proud," the older man said quietly. "He built his first business on this land." "I didn't know that," Marcus admitted. "There's a lot about your heritage I should have shared with you sooner." Richard's gaze took in the center, with its gleaming windows and welcoming doors. "You've done something remarkable here, something lasting." "It's just the beginning," Marcus replied. "Willow Creek has potential. It just needs the right investments." Richard nodded, understanding the deeper meaning in his son's words. Investment wasn't just about money. It was about time, attention, opportunity, belief. All the things he'd withheld for too many years. As the crowd moved inside for the reception, Eva joined them, completing the triangle of their complicated family. "Not bad for a kid from the East Side," she said, nudging her son playfully. Marcus smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought them here, from a dusty rodeo arena to this moment of possibility. Not bad for a kid who once thought his only way out was staying on a bull for 5 seconds. 5 seconds of courage, Richard murmured. Sometimes that's all it takes to change everything. Marcus looked between his mother, who had given him everything, and his father, who had only recently learned how to give. Sometimes, he agreed, it's just the beginning. Dear listeners, we hope Marcus's journey from the back of Bronco Thunder to creating lasting change in Willow Creek has touched your hearts. His story reminds us that sometimes the greatest obstacles become our greatest opportunities, and that 5 seconds of courage can truly change a life forever. For more inspiring stories of transformation, resilience, and redemption, check out our special playlist by clicking the link to your left. If this tale of family, forgiveness, and finding your own path resonated with you, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Every day, we bring you powerful narratives that explore the complexities of human relationships and the triumph of the human spirit. What was your favorite moment from Marcus's story? Share your thoughts in the comments below and join our community of storytellers and listeners. Until our next journey together, remember